before you start the networking, if you can do some work on understanding what your values are, and there's a lot of talk about values, and I mean your core values, so not just what's important to you, it's what's running through your core. So for me, it's all about respect and courtesy, trust and authenticity. If my values get trodden on in any way, I feel like it's someone's kicking me in the stomach. That's when you know they're your true values. So you find out what your values are when you're at real highs, and then when you're at real lows as well. So what stays really important. And sometimes our values are put upon us by other people. You should feel that this is important.
What if unlocking your full potential at work isn't just about being talented, but about getting your mindset and habits right to perform at your best? And why do some leaders rise above the challenges while others feel stuck in the grind? Well, today I'm joined by Alex Webb, a leadership expert, author, and high performance coach with a career that spans education, elite sports, media, and tech, including working alongside a Dragon's Den investor. But before we dive in, I have a quick 60-second favor to ask, and that's to subscribe to this podcast and sign up for the 51% on our website. It's free and makes a huge difference, helping us bring in even more incredible guests and host impactful events for our community. And now's the time to step up and take control of your health and wealth with practical steps that fit your life, backed by a supportive community, and I can't wait to see you at our events. And finally, a quick but important note, the views shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only, and they don't replace professional medical or financial advice. So always consult with a qualified expert for personalized guidance. Alex, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on. I'm really excited to have this conversation. Please could you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your journey from what you were doing to what you're doing now? That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shreya. Thanks for having me. So I'm Alex Webb. I am a behaviour and leadership consultant. I've been in this world now for nearly 10 years officially, but I think everything I've done has kind of led up to this moment, and I think that's what many people's roles and careers do as well. We talk a lot about the ABCD of work, which is you get a job, you then get a better job, then you get a career, and then you get your dream job. But I think I'm there at my dream job, but it's taken me a while to get there. So I started off in education as a PE teacher. It's something I always wanted to do. I was massively into my sport as a child. But then when I got there, I realized actually I wanted to find out a little bit more about the world, how the world works. So I went into sport events and TV and media, and which took me all around the world, looking after the top 40 surfers of the world at one time, which was great fun, definitely when you got to go out to Hawaii. I then moved into the world of conferences, so events, but I was in an agency, and we did sort of big conferences and big interactive events, which was great fun for corporates. From there, I was headhunted over to a marketing company where I was an events director then. I kind of did a big step up, but we did more commercial events. So Sky TV was probably my biggest client, Coke, and Sainsbury's, and we just did lots of launches and programs for them, and that was great fun. Long hours working with celebrities, and just a lot of fun with working with amazing people. I then had a family, and that I know, as for many women, it makes us think about what's next. I knew I couldn't stay in the world of events because I was doing 12, 14-hour days, and that just was never going to happen. And I loved it at that time. So I was at a crossroads, didn't know where to go. But again, my networks then invited me in to actually go and work with one of the dragons from Dragon's Den to support him with as a program director. He was doing lots of work around how to be an entrepreneur. He was very much under the belief that entrepreneurship could be taught. So we were going around the UK, ended up in Romania, actually doing some programs over in Romania as well, teaching entrepreneurship. So that was great fun, and we had lots of programs, and I was supporting him with that, mainly holding him accountable for what he said he was going to do, and I helped make him do it because he was a bit of a loose cannon. But then son number two came along, and it was when a colleague then said to me, Alex, when are you coming back into the office? Because you bring the calm. I thought, oh, I haven't got calm at home. I've got two under 2.5 and a husband who travels. I can't, then go to a workplace which is that frantic too. So I decided to leave there and ended up then again network, sitting around my neighbour's kitchen table. He was ex-Google and had just come back from an entrepreneur's mission. And it was all around entrepreneurs who are working in sort of fast growth companies, more in the world of clean technology, so sustainability. And they were looking for some additional support. So I'm someone who just gets stuff done and a safe pair of hands. So I joined that small team, then a startup, partnered with Innovate UK and UK Trade and Investment, so government programme. And we ran entrepreneurs missions, so taking smaller companies out to India, America, Brazil, introducing them to partners, investors, helping them tell their story so they could get their product or platform out to the market. So that sort of took me up to 2015, and then we had a government change and that funding ceased for a while, and that's when I had a massive dip in confidence, because we had to pivot the company I was in, and they were mainly PR people, and they went down a PR route, and I just wasn't using my strengths at all. I didn't know that at the time. I just thought I was rubbish, and who would employ a mum of two wanting to only work 3 days a week? Eventually, after working for 6 months with no pay, I then moved and stepped back, connected with my events people again, and got straight back into the events and facilitation world, which led me into what I do now today: leadership, self-awareness, resilience, working with young leaders, women leaders, and then teams and organizations, just to build that sort of more awareness of who they are and how they can kind of perform at their best, because I'm now about unlocking that potential, building that performance, and increasing productivity. So that's where I am today, and that's what brings me here to you.
Wow, what a amazing journey, really. And I feel like I really resonate with some of that, because, and I'm sure a lot of women do, in terms of starting their career off, and then I think the what shall I do moment, or what am I doing moment, really comes for a lot of women when they start having children, or or start planning for children. And it kind of makes you think that, does the workplace support that? Does it not? How am I going to fit back into the workplace? There's lots of thoughts going on there. And like I said, I really resonate with moving around, doing different things, and really trying to find what works for you in your environment. But I also, at the same time, feel like it always, or usually, ends up being a woman's problem, in the sense that it's always the woman having to think about, right, what shall I do now because I've got children? How am I going to fit my working life in with my children? Which company will support me, or should I start my own thing, and things like that. So leading on to that, really, at whatever stage you're at, really, it doesn't mean that a woman is having a child or anything like that, but how do you really know if you're reaching your full potential in the workplace? What kind of signals should you be getting, and what are the ways to reach your full potential?
So I think you feel you've reached your potential. I don't know if it's ever full potential, but I think it's always something to be moving forward to. But you feel energized. You feel like you want to be there. You feel like you're being productive. And one of the most important things that we work a lot on with the women that we work with is you can be your authentic self in that environment. So we talk a lot about having an environment in which you can thrive, so that you can perform at your best. You can be your high performing self, whatever that is. So that's how I know that you're kind of reaching your potential, or you're high performing. But ways that you can start to reach your full potential, gosh, that is a massive area. We always say, start with self. That self-awareness is really, really key. And a great exercise to do actually is to ask yourself, well, who am I at my best? What am I doing? Who am I with? What's the type of work I'm doing? What am I achieving? Who am I, collaborating with? What's the environment? And just really think about, who am I when I'm at my best, when I'm feeling that energy? So when we get to understand, when we've got that awareness, we can go, right, well, what do I need to do to be that person more? So what helps me be that person? So for me, it's definitely sleep, eating well, and exercise are the three things that I have to focus on. And then what's hindering me? What's getting in my way? And then you can kind of write that list. It's a really handy or interesting activity to do, and you can do that with a coach, or you can do that with a friend, and talk it through. When you understand that, you understand then what you're thriving for. So that would be my starting point, and that's self-awareness. Other ways, I mean, people talk about knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses. It's great to be able to have some proof of that. So whether you've done a psychometric profiling test or any profiling report that you can do, just helps give you a little bit of language that you can then say, I am A, and if you've got 3 words to describe you, so I know I'm a very organized, good communicator and motivating leader. They're the 3 things that would come out for me as my strengths. So I know I can say that to myself and go, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So it builds that confidence too. So understanding self, knowing what energizes you. So there's a great tool out there that's just come out for the last 3 years called Working Genius. And it's what energizes you. Every project that you do starts with an idea and goes through the different stages. So an ideation stage, an activation stage, and then an implementation stage. You know, those completer finishers, getting stuff done. Where do you get your energy from along that process? If you understand that, you can then go and find a role which allows you to be in that space more, sort of 80% of your role rather than all of it, because that's the thing that leads to burnout, if we're in a role that de-energizes us. So there's lots of tools out there that can help us. And actually recently I was doing a lecture for Schroders all around having happy and healthy relationships at work. And one of the key things that they came out with, the main 3 sort of metrics in which they measured happiness at work, which again, happiness leads to job satisfaction, efficiencies, and productivity. The key metrics were, do I have a best friend at work? What I do matters, and I matter to the people at work. It's a big thing about mattering. So when we start talking about how can we start to reach our full potential, start on self, then look at how you impact others, and then look at the environment that you're in. And that will give you some great clues as to, is this the place or the job or the company you're in at the moment, is that helping me be the best version of me? And then you can start making some changes.
Yeah, that's great, really. I'm such a big believer of understanding you and what you want, what you're about, what your values are, and things like that, because only then you can really start understanding what kind of career you want, or even if that involves starting your own business, it doesn't really matter. I also feel like there are so many people out there doing a job or a career that they can't stand, or they don't really like, they're not really that passionate about, and they're doing it because it pays the bills ultimately. Now, how, and I don't also feel like people really know that about themselves, because they're just, get up, get ready, get into work, come back and do whatever they need to do. It's like on repeat, and they don't really take a step back to think about these things. So how do you know if your career, whether that's working for someone or working for yourself, is the right one for you? And what are some of the things you can do to really start figuring that out, aside from the fact that, you said that understanding where you get your energy from, what other things can you do to decide if you're in the right career, basically?
I think it's really hard though, isn't it? Because you never know whether you're in the right career until you're in it. And it's that courage to make a change. I think the first question is the career I'm in at the moment, is the career I am in at the moment serving me well? And if it's not, then it's a chance to look at a change. You may not know where you're going for, but you can start to pick up clues. So behavior profiling, so understand the type of person you are, how you react, how you interact with others. Do you want a job which is kind of in an extroverted kind of environment? Do you want one that's sort of slightly more reflective? Do you want a job where you have to collaborate, you're working in a team, or would you like one that you're actually working on your own? There's so many clues that you can pick up as you build that self-awareness. I think a lot of the issues are, especially when I work with women doing sort of more career coaching, is they don't have the language in which to articulate who they are and what they do. So they're lost. So you can only judge a situation based on what you know.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit of coaching or listening to podcasts like this, is you start to unpick, okay, well, I haven't thought about it like that way. So maybe I can have a look at that element of my role or the environment I'm in. So my key things are: understand your behavior profile. So understand the environments in which you thrive. That would be my first set of clues I would want to go and sort of do a deeper dive into. And then I'd like to work out, right, what type of role, so what kind of thing energizes me. So if you think about a marketing role, for example, now a marketing role, it's huge. Marketing is a huge sort of area to go into. And when I speak to people and they go, oh yes, I'm in marketing, it's like, well, tell me more about the role. And they suddenly realize, oh, I'm in marketing and I'm having to do the implementation stuff. I'm having just to deliver the words or the campaigns. I'm just delivering. I love coming up with the ideas. So actually, I'd love to get more into sort of the social media marketing side of things, because you've got to be really creative. That's what would bring me energy. So it's looking at the role that you're doing. And that, plenty of times I've had women sort of going, actually, I am going to have a conversation with my manager because I think I'm in the right company. I'm just in the wrong role. So then they can start to say, right, what is available for me that I can use my skills and my knowledge of the business, but can put somewhere else. And we have to collect those clues along the way. Obviously, working with a careers coach can be really helpful because it will give you the language and sometimes the confidence to step out and do that. Because when you have reports, so a behaviour report or a working genius report, you can physically go to your manager, look at me, look, this is who I am. And if you would like to get the best out of me, or for me to be my high performing self, which I'd love to be in this company, this is where I would love to see if there's an opportunity for me to change so I can use these strengths or these skills. So that's kind of where I would start in terms of understanding the right career for you. And the other thing, when I work a lot with young people, and one of the activities I get them to do is I get them to go and network. So network and actually have a list of questions. What do you do? How did you get into it? What are the biggest challenges? What frustrates you about your role? What brings you joy about your role? How would, in your organization, someone like me with a name your top 3 skills, how would I add value to a company like yours? You don't know what you don't know. So I get my young people to go and have 6 conversations, 3 with people in your inside network, your closed network, so family and friends and people you know really well, and then 3 people in your open network, associates, people that you don't know well. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Go and have those conversations and find out what other jobs are out there, because we just don't know. We don't know what other jobs are out there. So that networking opportunity is a great activity to do. And once you do it, then suddenly wherever you are, you'll feel more confident to have those conversations about, so what do you actually do every day? What's your day to day? How does that work? What does that look like? Who do you speak to? Where does the energy come from? You can start having those detailed conversations and finding out more about the world of work and the opportunities out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think networking is absolutely fantastic, but I also know there are a lot of people that have a fear of networking as well, because it can be quite overwhelming. So where does one start, in the sense that, they're doing an X role? How do they kind of put themselves out networking? When you say networking, in terms of going to tech events or events in your field, or just kind of completely random? Because you could be just you could be networking forever, really. How do you narrow it down?
I'd be specific about it, especially if you're nervous about networking. The first thing I would do is network with your closed network. So people you know well, who know you. So there's no judging, there's no nerve there. And I would write down 10 questions that you would like to ask to explore their role, position, activities, where they get their energy from, life work balance, all of those things. Write 10 questions down and literally say, you know, if you've got a mum or a dad or an auntie or a sister or close university friends, and just say, would you mind half an hour, I'll buy your coffee, or can we do a Zoom chat? I'm just exploring the world of work. Would you mind asking a couple of questions? Start doing it that way. Then go, right, you know, to your mum or your sister or to your best friend, do you have anyone in your network who you think are in a completely different field to you and me, who would also be happy to have this type of conversation? The more you do that on an individual basis, you've planned the conversation, you've booked time in, you don't have to do that awkwardness of standing at a networking event going, oh my God, who do I talk to? Which can be hard. So build your confidence, first of all, in the questions you're going to ask and how to have those conversations. And then when you do go to networking events, so networking events are more specific in terms of finding out, it's not more, if you can find out about a role, but when you have one-to-one, people love talking about themselves.
Yeah.
So you're giving them that opportunity to do that. So that's where I would start with networking, in terms of finding out what types of other roles are around there, what types of other working environments are out there, and go, oh, actually, I'd like to work in that environment. Right, how does someone like me with my strengths and this type of experience, where can I add value? The more individual conversations you can have like that, then you're in the front of people's minds. Yeah. And then people go, oh, you know, there's a role coming up. Oh, I've just spoken to so-and-so. They'll be perfect for this. Maybe we'll get them in for an interview. So it's just about building up that muscle of being able to ask questions and exploring and being curious about other people. And then when you are in a networking event, and I always, if I'm standing on my own, I'll see a group of people and I'll just walk up and go, do you mind if I join you? And then I take it from there. So that's the first, I have that question in my back pocket. Do you mind if I join you?
Yeah.
And then it's easier.
Typically, no one's really going to say no, unless they're having a very private conversation. But yeah, most people really and truly, they are very welcoming in that kind of scenario. I think what you have just said, it's actually put light bulbs in my head. I never, ever thought about, you know, I'm fine with networking now. I never used to be, but that's because I put myself out there, and it's practice. And over time, you just get the confidence to do it. But I've never thought about approaching my family and friends and really talking in that detail with them. And, you know, I know what my friends do as a job, but I don't really know the detail. And I don't know who they know, or think about, actually, that sounds really good. Or do you know someone in your company that knows about this? Or, you know, these kinds of things. It's fantastic. I just know I'm going to go and do that now.
So I've recently, when I had, because I've got a company called Flying Start XP, which we work specifically with sort of 16 to 30-year-olds, and I'm getting a lot of individuals now who have done their first job, you know, and they've done the A job, of the ABCD, and they're now looking for a better one, but they don't know where to go. So what I do when we get to that exercise, they get to choose 4 people, and then I introduce them to 2 people in my network who could be of benefit. I'm very lucky to have a very wide network because of the different types of work I've done. Yeah. And that's great, because then they go, oh, I can't let Alex down. And I'll make an introduction over in the email, and then go right over to you now. And everyone I've done that with, they've always had the conversation. They said, we were really nervous, but I didn't want to let you down, and I knew I had to do it. And it's like, great, but you did it. And what did you find out? And that's when they go, right, I can do this. I've got that muscle. I'm starting to build that strength now, and I'm going to carry on. And as you say, who do you know? Who can I have the next coffee with? You know, set yourself a challenge, 1 coffee a week or 1 coffee a month with someone that you don't know, and explore their world of work.
No, that's great. I really, really love that. I don't even have that conversation with my husband.
Right, there we go. That's your challenge, Shreya.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I love that, because I feel like, you know, we have contacts. They're our friends and family. That's where you start, really, especially if you're nervous about going out there into the, you know, and you're kind of going into networking situations. If you just think, right, I'm going to go and start networking at this place, you're kind of just firing like randomly, really. And maybe that's why you're not really getting anywhere. It's not really strategic enough, like you've kind of put it, really.
And you mentioned earlier, you mentioned the importance of values. And I think if you can do, before you start the networking, if you can do some work on understanding what your values are, and there's a lot of talk about values, and I mean your core values, so not just what's important to you, it's what's running through your core. So for me, it's all about respect and courtesy, trust and authenticity. If my values get trodden on in any way, I feel like it's someone's kicking me in the stomach. That's when you know they're your true values. So you find out what your values are when you're at real highs, and then when you're at real lows as well. So what stays really important. And sometimes our values are put upon us by other people, and you should feel that this is important. So it's quite interesting to do an exercise, and I can send you a link actually where anybody can do that exercise, where 100 values come up with descriptions, and you can kind of help you get down to 3. So happy to share that with your listeners, to do that. But understand what your values are, because then you know what's really important to you. So you don't want to go into an environment where your values are going to be trodden all over, because that will be horrific. And then find out what your top 3 strengths are, because if you can say my top 3 strengths are X, Y, and Z, and people choose to follow me because, so I'm an XYZ leader and people choose to follow me because, if you've got that down and sorted, then go and have your meetings and your networking meetings, and say, this is who I am as a leader, this is why people choose to follow me, where can I add value into a team like yours or a company like yours? Who would you recommend I speak to? And then you're on to the next person.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great stuff to start thinking about, like now. Don't just, I really think, the importance of understanding you is I can't stress the importance of that. I mean, I'm not going to say I've worked it all out and I've done it all, and I'm starting my journey now. It's not a you one day thing or a 1 week thing. No. It's an ongoing process, and your values and your things that you want to do change given your environment and things that may or may not happen to you. So there's also that to consider, and it's not a right, I've figured it out, this is me for the rest of my life now. No, that's also not the case. These things evolve as well, and if it evolves, it's a good thing, really, because if you don't evolve, you're then going to be stuck in that thing that you so hate.
But I also think, so having the framework, so I talk about working genius and behavior profiling and having that language. If you've got those frameworks from which to evolve, you've got the language, and you can start to understand, that's why I'm feeling like this, because I see what's happening now in terms of someone's either impacted you in a negative way because they've trodden on your values, or my values are changing because I've now become a parent, or I've now become a grandparent, or they can evolve. But if you've got the framework from which to understand it, it's a lot easier process to kind of keep moving forward.
No, that's great. We'll definitely be sharing that link out for people to get started on. So, the other thing I want to talk about is, when you're in the workplace, or just generally, really, this thing about, resilience. Now, forming resilience versus taking BS. How do you know the difference? We can sit here and say, I'm really resilient. I'm resilient to this and that. But then there's a line that you don't cross, because then it's like, well, actually, am I taking BS? Am I taking stuff that I shouldn't actually be taking? And how do you know the difference with that?
It's been quite funny. Resilience suddenly is a word that's sprung up, and it's become just a word. I don't know. I feel sometimes with companies it's a tick box exercise. It's lost its true meaning. So we run a program called Resilient Women Leaders. Now, we've been running that for 4 years, but the reason where it's come from is I am, and my colleague Sky Dean, is we are resilient leaders consultants. Now, Resilient Leaders has been we're celebrating 25 years next year. So it's been around for a long time. And it's interesting how suddenly everyone goes, oh, we'll send women on Alex and Sky's Resilient Women Leaders program. They're going to come back resilient, and therefore I can throw more work at them. they're now resilient.
Yeah.
And it's a real frustration because it's, resiliency, it's, as you mentioned, it evolves, and you've got to work at it. You've got to build on it every single day. We talk about, if we're talking about resilient leaders, a resilient leader knows where they're strong, so they have their strengths. They know their area of development. They know what takes them from pressure to stress as well, and they know how to rebalance. So sometimes when we take on a lot of stuff, yes, I'm resilient, I can take it on, it's fine. But we keep layering it on, and we may have coping strategies that we can carry on. But we need to understand how to rebalance, because if we don't rebalance, we will snap. We talk about burnout. So if we don't, a resilient leader knows how they balance. They have that confidence in who they are and what they do. And we talk about if you've got confidence in the who I am, what I do, that emotional and cognitive side of leadership, you can build and take opportunities. You'll find your way through that uncertainty. So resiliency for me it builds over time. It's a muscle, and it's about having confidence when we're in uncertainty. So we talk about going to the gym. You are not going to get a six-pack overnight. Everybody knows that. They know the work and the effort that has to go in to building that muscle. It's the same with resiliency. I do a lot of work on mental fitness, to understanding, because what we say to ourselves and that inner narrative is huge in terms of resiliency. So yes, resiliency is about, people talk about it as bouncing back. I don't like that definition. I think resiliency is, how do we cope as we move, as pressure rises? How are we coping? Do we have the tools in which to do that, and the confidence in which to do that? So that's when you can that's the difference between resilience is a growth over time, and it's constant muscle, it's constant work on mental fitness, as well as, physical fitness as well. I mean, it all kind of comes in there, but it's understanding how we cope as pressure rises and we meet uncertainty, that we don't snap. We've got it under control. We can keep the calm. We can collaborate. We can pull in each other's strengths. It's not all down to us. We have a way of coping so that we can keep moving forward, so that we can stay high performing. That's what resiliency is in the work that we do.
Yeah. And I guess resiliency, your resilience can break down, and I guess end up with burnout, or you have a complete breakdown in whatever way that is. Now, so this is my point really. It's a muscle, yes, definitely. You start building resiliency from the moment you're born, really. Through life events and things that happen. At what point do you know, actually, this is too much? I can't take this anymore. And something needs to happen at that point, because you can't keep being resilient, because people, like you said, I feel like the more resilient you are, and boundaries also come into this. The more people throw at you, because they think you can cope with it. Oh, she can cope with that, or he can cope with that. Let's just give them extra, or let's let them do this and let them do that. But inside, you're just doing it because you're on autopilot. So,
and I think you mentioned the word there, boundaries. When we become a resilient leader, so when we use the word leader, it's everyone's a leader, because everyone influences someone. It's that leader with lowercase l. So when we become a resilient leader of ourselves, of others, of a team, we know when to step up, and we know when to step back to kind of lead. We know if someone asks us to do something, a job, and they want to throw something out at us, as a resilient leader, we would know whether we had the capacity to do that. And we would therefore have the language to be able to say, actually, if that's really important, when would you like me to fit that in? Because I can push something back, or this is what I'm working on at the moment, which is my priority. Just let me know. We have that conversation. We lean into that kind of healthy conflict. We're able to have the conversation. If we weren't resilient leaders and we just said, oh yeah, I can just muddle through, good British kind of thing, I can muddle through, and we don't have the conversation, of course they're going to throw more stuff at you, and you're going to get it done until you burn out. So resilient leadership is having the tools and the strategies to help you push things away, know what takes you from pressure to stress. So is that extra thing going to push me up that spectrum a little bit more? Right, if it is, I'm going to say no to it. And that's what we need to get better at doing. Yeah. And I think your question about how do we know? Well, when you have that self-awareness and you understand who, going back to that first exercise I mentioned, who are you at your best? If that person that you've created and visualized, you at your best, if you're not that person and you're not using those strengths and you haven't got that energy, then you're probably being pushed up that pressure to stress spectrum. And the further we go up, the sort of more de-energizing it is. So we talk about, we have kind of a scale, and we talk about coping. So when we're coping, we're everything's manageable. Then there's pressure, and pressure's quite good. We sometimes do our best work in pressure. There's a bit of uncertainty there. Then there's overwhelm. Now, overwhelm is a word I know when I'm in overwhelm, and I can say, right, I'm just in overwhelm at the moment. Therefore, I need to do X, Y, and Z to get me out of overwhelm. And I know I've got the tools to do that, whether it's an inner voice or a practical thing. I've got those tools now to help bring me back down into coping and pressure. If we stay in overwhelm for too long, which is overwhelm, the levels of demand are a little bit too much beyond how we can cope, that's going to push us into burnout. And this is when we're constantly overwhelmed. Your grasp on reality may not be quite right. And we can see that. So if you think about someone who their sort of behavior, sort of preferences, or the behaviors that you see are making decisions, action orientated, getting stuff done, always really good at being challenged, love setting goals. As they move up that pressure to stress spectrum and moving into burnout or overwhelm, you'll probably see them being a bit more aggressive, can't really cope with it, everything's a bit too much. They're being a bit rocking the boat a bit too much, just get it done. That kind of behavior type, that extroverted thinking type of behavior type. When they go into burnout, and I have seen this because my husband was in burnout and then ended up taking 3 years out because of it, he flipped to the opposite behavior type of quite emotional, couldn't make decisions, procrastinated beyond belief, just very, very low all the time. He'd flipped. So the behaviors massively changed. So if you are aware of your behaviors and who you are at your best and what your strengths are, as those start to, as you're not living your strengths or you're overdoing them and we're becoming more de-energized, that is what's pushing us into burnout. And you can start to notice it. So for me, when we work with leaders, we want to catch people in overwhelm or before they get to overwhelm and give them the tools to help them come back down. When you get to burnout, sometimes we would say, actually, probably need to go and get professional help here. We can give you some tools, and I have worked with clients who are in burnout, and it's been a long process, again, consistent, long process of teaching new habits and how to connect the brain, the mind and how we naturally think of things. So that's a longer process. So it's burnout is a horrible place to be. But also burnout is not about sometimes how tired you are. I go back to working genius. If you are doing work that energizes you, like I did in the events industry, I could work 12, 14-hour days and I loved it. I wasn't reaching burnout because I loved the work I did. Yeah. If you are working in doing a role which de-energizes you, you're going to reach burnout a lot quicker. So really start to understand what the role is you're doing, what is energizing you in your role, what's de-energizing you in your role. And if the balance is wrong, you are probably going to reach burnout quicker than others. So that's kind of my overview on kind of burnout and that pressure to stress.
No, that's really helpful. And I guess a lot of this involves, we're not going to have this conversation now, but it's self-care, what you're putting into your body, nutrition, fitness, sleep is a big one. And if those aren't in sync, then that burnout process could be a lot quicker as well, or it just happens. I have a bit of a bugbear with burnout as well, in the sense that you get a lot of entrepreneurs, I guess, or really highly successful people that work like crazy to build their business and get it to a multi-million pound or billion whatever pound company, and then they completely burn out, and then they admit that they've burnt out. Oh, we burnt out, or I burnt out. Don't make this mistake, and don't do it like this, and build the company like this. But then it's kind of, well, if I did it that way, it's going to take me 50 years as opposed to the 10 years it took you. It's that versus, there is no either or in that sense.
So with that example in mind, I would probably say, because I've worked with a lot of startups who have then gone on to, sometimes when you have a startup, it's your idea. You get it to a stage where you're starting to employ other people. And then what you've got to realize is what in that process from ideation, activation to implementation, where do you get your energy from? Now, a lot of startups get their energy from the ideation bit. When it comes to the actual doing, oh gosh, please don't. That's why they get to burnout, is because they don't step back from the business and take on a role which energizes them and let someone else be the MD or the CEO, and they get who gets energized by that. So when I hear of entrepreneurs setting up businesses and they hit burnout, I believe it's because they haven't stepped back early enough and let someone else come in and run the business. That the best entrepreneurs start a business, get it up and going, move on to the next one. They know when to step back, and then they don't hit burnout.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, because they do carry on doing everything and getting involved in everything.
Yeah, because that feeling they probably have a high need for control.
Yeah. So I would love to hear your kind of top 3 tips on identifying your potential. So if you want to start now, really start thinking about you and whether you're in the right career, and so on, what would be your top 3 tips?
I did think about this, and I just came up with self-awareness, and self-awareness. Right. But when I talk about self-awareness, it's you have awareness of self, you have awareness of others, so how you impact the relationships that you have, and the awareness of the environment that you're in. If you can understand who you are at your best, what helps you and hinders you. So my first thing would probably do that exercise. Who am I at my best? And then write down that list of what helps me be at my best. So you've mentioned sleep, what you're eating, your exercise, but it could also be being in such and such a team, or collaborating with others, or focusing on the detail. What is it that helps you be your best, and then what hinders you? I had a client who said to me when I said, what hinders you? And she said, more than 3 G&Ts the night before. Okay, well, that's an easy thing to control. So that was, so again, understanding what that is. So that's self. Others, how do you interact with others? When you understand yourself and your own behaviors, and how your behaviors change when they go from pressure to stress, you can start to see that in others as well, and you can be more empathetic and supportive, and understand what their strengths are as well. And then that awareness of environment. What environment do I need to thrive? As a leader, am I creating an environment where friendships can be formed? Coaching a guy the other day, and he said his manager was against friendships within the team. You stay in your lane, and obviously this guy wanted to get out of there pretty quickly. But it's like, how can leaders think that they're going to get the best out of the people if they're not allowing that safe environment and relationships to form? So yeah, top 3 tips: self-awareness, so self-awareness of self, others, and the environment, and how you fit in with all of that. And then you can start understanding what your true potential is, where you need to be, and who you need to be around to reach your true potential.
So leading on to that, once you've figured out your true potential, what top 3 tips would you give to start taking action on that?
So there's a Japanese proverb, which is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. When's the second best? Well, that's now. So what are you going to do now? What's the one thing you need to do now? It's that kind of small steps. That sort of, you've probably heard of the David Brailsford. He talks about the 1% margins. One day you talk about the 1% margins of what can I do today that's going to make me better tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if you keep doing that 1% every day, you're going to be better by about 300% by the end of 1 year. So that first thing is, what's the one thing you're going to do today that's going to help you be better tomorrow? And I was listening to a podcast this week actually, and The Rock, the wrestler, talked about that, said, just one day, that phrase, one day I'll be able to do this, or one day I'm going to achieve this. So flip it. Day one, what am I going to do today? And you spoke about it at the very beginning. We don't have to start on the 1st of January. Let's start now. So what is that one thing? So I would say, think about your one thing, that small step that you can do today that makes you even better tomorrow. The second thing is about prevention. What is preventing us from being our best self, from reaching that true potential? A lot of procrastination comes because we're not aware of what's preventing us. We don't have the language, which goes back to self-awareness. If we've got the language of what stops us, I don't know if you've come across the work of Shazad Sharmin, Positive Intelligence.
No.
If you haven't, go and search them up. You can do a questionnaire. It's a free questionnaire online called positiveintelligencequestionnaire.com. And you can find out what your saboteurs are. What's sabotaging you? Is it your need for achieving, your need for, are you an avoider? Are you a pleaser? Are you a procrastinator? Are you a hypervigilant? Are you hyper-rational? We all have saboteurs, which we've needed to have to get us where we are today, but they can be preventing us from moving forward. So what is stopping us getting in our way? And often it's our internal thoughts. So a lot of the positive intelligence stuff is around what's the narrative we're telling ourselves, that mental fitness. So yeah, I would start there as well, because mental fitness, if you think about your sort of operating system, everything we do operates from how we think about ourselves, that self-belief and that imposter syndrome or lack of confidence, whatever it may be. That can be preventing us. That's our limited beliefs going, stops us from achieving. So focusing in on what is sabotaging us so that we can then go, right, how can I think differently about that so I can move forward? That can be really helpful. So yeah, that's a freebie online. I can pop the questionnaire over to you as well.
Yeah, that was great. I'll add that.
That's kind of preventing you from taking action. But then the third thing would be ask for support. If you ask for support, or you share, like I shared when I was starting to think, right, I've got to have a fitness routine here. And I said to my whole family, if you don't see me in my sports kit on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday morning, ask me why. Because I was committing to do 3 workouts a week. And they did. They held me accountable. When you share your intentions with someone, 1, it's good to hear it out loud, but 2, it makes you more accountable. So share them out. And we often talk about insights. So if you're listening to a podcast like this, great, you've started to think about, what can I do to make me even better tomorrow than I am today? But change doesn't come just from listening or reading. It comes from doing. So getting involved in a group workshop or a program, or actually doing something where you have to share with others, that is 80% more likely that you are going to be successful in making that change. So get on a course, get a coach, do something, ask for support. Yeah. So that would be my third one.
That's great. They are fantastic tips that will probably help me too.
Right.
No, it's great. It's great to get different perspectives as well. And I think a lot of people also say, I haven't got the time to do all this. I haven't got the time to, think about me and my values and, myself and where I even start. And my take on that is, I mean, you may have some tips on that as well, but my take on it is, if you're working 9 to 5 or 9 to 8, whatever your hours are, take some days off work. Everyone, I'm pretty sure, is entitled to, if they're working full time, part-time will be less, some time off work. Use those days, and don't think that if I use those days, I'm not going to have enough days for when I actually go on holiday, but it will work for you in the long run. It will be more beneficial for you to do that in the long run. That's my take on time.
I think with that, it's again that consistency. Remember, again, going into the gym to build a six pack, you need to be in there consistently. So it would be consistently supporting understanding who you are and what you do. So get a coach, go on. And when we run a program called Renew You, and it's just 5 weeks, 1 hour a week, and we do it 4 times a year, and it allows people just to stop for an hour a week and focus in on themselves. So that consistency of just starting to kind of think, right, what do I need to start myself off slowly, so that when I do take that day off work, I've got the information, the tools, I understand who I am, I understand what energizes me, and I can go and maybe have those coffees to do that networking. But again, networking once a week, once every 2 weeks, do things consistently that's going to help you become more self-aware, start to understand the job market and the world of work. Then you can start to think about making a change. Because from networking, it's amazing how many jobs you can get through that contact with someone within an organization, rather than going through, Indeed or on an agency, because people by people. So I would say, before you take that day off, do little things consistently before that, so you've got some language, you've got some confidence in who you are and what you do, so that you can use that day more sort of proactively.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could take the day off and sit there and watch Netflix all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll probably feel even worse, maybe, or maybe rejuvenated. But yeah.
And that's, again, and we talk to the women leaders we work with, is about being intentional. But if you intentionally know that you want to make a change, again, what's the one thing you can do today to make you a better person tomorrow? And that could just be, I'm just going to look at my CV, or I'm going to do the positive intelligence saboteurs test to see how that helps me. And when you do that, you get a list, you get emails that support you with that learning as well. So, just do something each day. Look on Google, give me some great CV templates. Just, even if it's 10 minutes, half an hour, just put that in your diary. How much time do you spend scrolling on your phone? Reduce that, note down how much time you spend scrolling on your phone. Right, just use 10 minutes of that time. We can all make time if we are intentional about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be a massive, leap. Like you said, 10 minutes, let me just go over my CV, or let me just do 10 minutes in the gym, whatever. It's the intention. And I love that. I think accountability is so important. It really, if you have someone that you can be accountable to, whether that is a coach or a friend, or I personally, for me, friends and partners don't work for me, because it's always like, oh, it's all right, they'll let me, they're not going to do anything. But yeah, whoever can hold you accountable, I think is great. And yeah, absolutely, coaches and mentors and people like that can definitely hold you accountable.
And so can your kids. They're quite good at doing it, because the amount of time we spend holding our kids accountable, because we're nagging them, I get them to nag me, so that they can see that you need reminders to help, bring change. So I'm trying to role model that with my 2 boys as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kids can definitely teach you a lot. I have my daughters teaching me a lot about each other, and yeah, I had one of my eldest daughters telling me about how I am not doing the right thing with my middle one.
Okay.
She's teaching me how to react with my middle one. And it actually hit home, and I thought, oh yeah. Yeah.
And that's the same with teams, isn't it? When we are leaders and we're leading teams, we're always going to have an older one, a middle one, and a younger one in that team, aren't we? So it's again, understanding their behavior preferences, understanding what energizes them, and then adapt your own behavior or your own communication style to improve that relationship. And the more we're aware of our own needs and how we like to be communicated to, we then realize, oh, that's not going to work for everybody else. I mean, I always remember my parents saying, treat everyone how you would like to be treated. And now with the work I do, I'm like, oh no, treat everyone how they would like to be treated. And that's when you build the relationship. So it works in business. Oh my goodness, it absolutely works with your family as well.
Yeah, Yeah, that's so right, actually, because if I treated everyone the way I want to be treated, that's not going to work, because everyone's different. Everyone wants to be treated differently to me. So yeah, that so definitely doesn't work. Anyway, all the links are going to be in the show notes, so they're going to be super useful links. And I hope that if anyone's listening, they take that 10 minutes out to do something, whatever that is, even if you do one of the links that Alex has suggested. Anyway, Alex, it's been so inspiring to have you on. Lots and lots of amazing nuggets of information that honestly, I've learned so much from it myself. So thank you for being on the podcast. It's been amazing to have you on.
You're welcome. Thank you, Shreya. Loved the conversation.
Thank you.